Is this a critical moment for Putin? A few days ago, he misled Trump by claiming that Zelenskyy attacked his residence and still hasn't provided any evidence at all.
The problem with the allegations being made against Ukraine is not just the easiness that the dictator Putin was able to convince President Trump that something was amiss, but the fact that other countries were also able to issue statements saying that they were concerned about this. At the same time, we know that this week there was a 4-year-old girl who was killed in Zhytomyr. We know that actively we have more civilian casualties happening on Ukrainian territory this year than we have in the last 2 years. So this dissonance about what's happening to people who are actually dying and then this alleged attack is the real problem in having a lasting peace. If it's so easy to convince the President of the United States, who is supposed to chair this peacemaking committee, according to the 20-point plan that Ukraine is working on, it's really going to be a problem to have a firm understanding of what is happening in Ukraine and where the demarcation line is, unless we have some outside independent monitors.
Trump, I think Trump doesn't care about murdered children anymore because they care Putin. They say, Ukraine, don't hit Putin, please.
Well, we've heard this rhetoric from Trump from the very beginning of his administration. He constantly refers to the fact that both Russians and Ukrainians are dying. And when we as activists here in the United States have meetings with the Senate and members of Congress, we rightfully point out that one of those people are on their own territory, and the invader has come into our house. The invader has come in and decided to attack us. And so any kind of casualties on their end are in self-defense for Ukraine. You can't equate this. There's a very strong sense in the United States of a stand your ground rule, where many people are in the United States cannot be convicted of murder or shooting another person if, in fact, they are defending themselves from an attack. This is exactly the people who are dying on the Russian side. They are attacking and they are being killed in the process of attacking Ukraine. So Donald Trump gets this fundamentally wrong. And every time he equates the deaths of Ukrainians and Russians, one side is doing this on purpose. The other side would rather not have any Russians come onto their territory.
Mm-hmm. It looked like Trump is playing along with Putin, believing him without any proof. What's your take?
It's not just Donald Trump, but it's very clear that the embassies out of India and Pakistan also put out statements saying that they were concerned about what's happening. Again, no proof, not even a confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Clearly something that was completely made up. And in the end, the rest of the world has to deal with this when at the same time, Ukraine is ready and always supplying information. From that first meeting in the Oval Office where J.D. Vance and Donald Trump wanted to attack President Zelenskyy, President Zelenskyy came with a folder full of dead people. You can see what's happening in Ukraine. You can see the people who are being starved. You can see the evidence of those who have been released from prison in Russia and how they've been undernourished and brainwashed at times. These are the things that Ukraine has proof and evidence from, and that is being ignored at the same time, as you say, President Putin, the dictator Putin, is able to just mention things, and unfortunately, some world leaders are taking them as fact. That represents the fundamental problem of leaving this process to one person or another. It has to be a multi-state solution, and it has to be done with congressional or parliamentary inaction after the fact. We can't be relying on the word of Donald Trump if he's going to change his mind every day. We need to have both the Senate of the United States and the Verkhovna Rada ratify some kind of security guarantee. Otherwise, this deal will not happen.
Mm-hmm. The last few days have honestly shocked me. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov openly said that Russia would fight alongside China over Taiwan against the US. That sounds absurd and directly contradicts US interest.
Absolutely. And here is another way of manipulation. Russia inserting itself into the sphere of Venezuela, saying that they could take care of Maduro if some kind of deal would be worked out, and that would satisfy President Trump. Same thing with Taiwan. Russia saying that they could help out in some way, or they would stand against the United States unless the United States stop its support of Ukraine in Russia's endeavor to take over that part of the world. This again reflects the deficiencies of a Trump America First outlook. Not so much the proposed isolationism, but the fact that Donald Trump and his administration see everything as a two-party negotiation. There is no multilateral conversations. There are no groups. This is why in the national security strategy, America comes out so forcefully against the European Union. Sovereign states who work together. This is the enemy of a two-party negotiation. Donald Trump always wants to have maximum leverage as the largest economy against other countries when he's negotiating. And in this case, it's not enough just to be a very powerful and rich economy. You need to have friends in the world. And that's what Ukraine is demonstrating with their enormous amount of allies.
By the way, Bloomberg published an investigation showing that China is not only buying oil from Putin, but now also liquefied natural gas, shipping it by sea on tankers. That clearly weakens Trump's pressure on Putin during peace talks. Does Trump really not see this?
I think the issue is every time Trump has tried to make oil and gas a central focus of pressure on Russia, he is belied by the fact that some of the political allies he has in Europe, whether it's Fico or Orban in Eastern Europe, or as you mentioned, China, or even the the fuel purchases by Turkey, and the way that its southern coast refinery has been receiving more crude oil from Russia and refining it and then selling it to Europe than it did before 2022. These are problem areas that need to be addressed with a constantly evolving sanctions package. We cannot just have one inaction of sanctions and then throw your hands up a year after the fact and say sanctions don't work when the enemy has constantly changed its ships that it's used in its coast fleet to sell fuel in international waters, that the entities that are registered that process the payments for this constantly change. We cannot have one regime of sanctions without it being updated, because that is how the enemy wins. In this case, Donald Trump has sought to increase the amount of oil and liquefied natural gas that the United States is sending or selling to Europe and Ukraine, and that has happened. However, he's not focusing on the grand game, which is, like you mentioned, looking at what's happening between the fuel sales with China and Russia, looking at what's happening with other countries who are enabling this illicit trade of sanctioned oil and gas. This is a problem that needs to be resolved for the future. If it's not, then we have other countries on Russia's border that are just as easily attacked as Ukraine.
What also surprised me is the American community, not just ordinary people, but institutions as well. Trump's policy are rapidly pushing Russia and China closer together, while China keep getting stronger. I find it hard to believe no one noticed this.
Well, it's been a concern of people who have been focusing on shifting America's stance to being more aggressive against China, or focusing it as an adversarial relationship between China. This obviously has borne out in an aggressive trade negotiation with China, which America has lost every time that Donald Trump has proposed a trade war with China. It happened in his first term. It's happening in his second term, where we are losing out and in the end conceding a lot more than we did at the very beginning. However, the relationship between China and Russia is chiefly one where Russia has sold its future to China almost entirely. For the benefit of trying to conquer Ukraine, Russia is deeply indebted to China in terms of financing its drone manufacturing, in terms of possibly some illicit artillery. But we do know that the majority of microchips and technology that are used in Russian military vehicles and drone technology, all is coming from China. It has been called out by numerous countries at the United Nations and at the Security Council, and China is still not being stopped doing this. for the reason that Russia has basically given up its entire future, whether it's its gas future, oil future, or territorial future. It will not have the economy to sustain itself as an independent entity at the rate it's losing population on a regular basis, as well as selling its future to China. So I think in the end, Russia should be more focused on the fact that China will own more of its commodities. And if it so happens that they want to take back Manchuria or other territories, Russia will not have the means to stop them, because in this war, Ukraine has been able to destroy most of Russia's mechanized vehicles, as well as a full third of its airborne nuclear triad.
Let's talk more about the negotiation themselves. How do you feel about them overall? Are you satisfied? Did anything shock you?
Well, I think Ukraine is doing the right strategy, engaging as much as possible with this administration. That's what this administration likes. It does not want to be dictated to. It likes to be charmed. And Ukraine is sending a variety of people on a regular basis. You have diplomats, you have security experts, you have military experts, definitely showing the United States that Ukraine is willing to work with the United States on any level that it wants. And it doesn't want this to go as it did at the beginning of the year, where we have one meeting with Zelenskyy and then months of time where we don't have direct negotiations. Ukraine is committed to doing negotiations whenever and wherever the Trump administration wants. It's clear that that's not happening from the Russian side. And at some point, all of these negotiations, all of this strong bonding between these two sides has to pay off, in respect to demonstrating that the enemy is keeping bombing Ukraine at the same time as Donald Trump says that they're committed to peace. At some point, Ukraine expects this to break. It hasn't broken so far. The spell that the Kremlin is able to pull, whether through Putin or Dmitriev or other interlocutors over members of the Trump administration, is something that we still have to overcome.
What are the main problem is the US right now? Has anything changed since the last time I asked you? Could you name the top 5 issues facing the country, and is Ukraine one of them?
Well, Ukraine exists as a fundamental failure in terms of promises that Donald Trump made at the very beginning of an administration. I don't know if it's enough of an issue to remain a factor in the upcoming 2026 elections, but that will be a focus of all politics in the United States, beginning already, as we know that if this year, 2025, represents the largest number of resignations or announcements that members of Congress won't be running for re-election in 2026, the largest number ever in a post-presidential election year. So we know that we will have big changes in Congress in 2027 after the elections of 2026. And that will be the key focus. Beyond that, we also know that Donald Trump has been weakened immensely politically because of his actions in trying to block certain pieces of legislation. He was enormously influential at the beginning of his administration, making sure that he got the big, beautiful bill passed. But beyond that one piece of legislation, little to no legislating has been done by Congress because of the control of Donald Trump over them. And at some point, that is expected to break also. It's already started with the Epstein file vote, which was a majority of all members of Congress but one voted for this against President Trump's wishes, and it passed unanimously in the Senate. I think it's possible that we will see more of these types of votes coming forward. That might have to do with healthcare, which is now being proposed to be done over the objections of the Speaker of the House as another privilege resolution. And we have other issues that need to be dealt with immediately, not least of which a potential government shutdown that would begin on January 30th. So there's a lot of change in the air in the United States. There's a potential for more shutdowns and more agitation as we enter what is supposed to be a celebratory year, America's 250th birthday. I don't know what's going to happen between now and November when we have our elections, but definitely Donald Trump is going to increase his rhetoric. It's going to be less and less effective in Congress as many of his close allies, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, have broken with him. And we will see how politically he is effective. It might be that the one big, beautiful bill is the only piece of legislation he is able to do in all 4 years of his administration.